Howdy, and welcome to Math 153 Elementary Statistics. I am Lance Curtis, and this is an introductory lecture to the course. What we're going to do today is take a look at some introductions, both of myself and presumably of you, although as a video it's going to be hard for you to do any talking, since video is really one-way communication. But we may find a workaround for that. We'll talk a little bit about expectations, both what you can expect from me and what I expect from you as a student. We'll hit some highlights of the syllabus and then discuss the course structure before we wrap up the lecture for today. So first, welcome to Math 153. This is an introductory survey class about statistics. The name of the course is Elementary Statistics. Emphasis on the word elementary. There's a lot of things you can do with statistics. You get higher up, especially when it comes to model making. And by the time you get done with this class, you are going to be making some very rudimentary statistical models. But the emphasis of the class is not on anything super complicated. It's on elementary statistics. And I know a lot of students, they come into a stats class and they're like, oh, I have to take statistics. Oh, how am I ever going to understand this? And they're really psyched up about it. And let me just say, if that's the attitude that you have about the course, I want to calm your fears. Okay, statistics is actually pretty easy once you understand the conventions. Now, you have to do a little work to understand the conventions, don't get me wrong. But I try to structure the class in a way that makes getting those conventions understood and to have an easier time with it and quite frankly an enjoyable time with it. And we'll talk about that later in the lecture today. But first, let me give you an introduction as to who I am. I graduated from the University of Idaho with the degrees you see here. When I was an undergraduate, I actually double majored in engineering and English. And it was a very interesting time for me. I mean, how many people do you know who actually have a double major like that? Few and far between, let me tell you. And I have some stories I could tell you about that later if you're interested. But when I finished with my first undergraduate degrees, I decided to stay and pursue a master's degree in mechanical engineering. And I did that. I picked up another bachelor's degree along the way. And then I graduated and went out into the real world and began my career as an engineer. The first engineering job that I really had was out in New York State, working for a small company as a materials engineer. We did what's called metallography, materials testing. So if an example of that you see in the photograph that I'm showing here, you look at this, what you're looking at here in this image is a bolt that's been cut vertically down the center. Okay, so we cut this bolt in half, and we take the half bolt and we mount it in epoxy resin. Okay, so that the cut surface is facing up out of the epoxy. And then what we do is we take that surface and we grind it, we polish it, and we get it to a mirror finish. And then we're going to apply what are called etchants to the surface of the metal. Etchants are simply chemical reagents designed to reveal certain characteristics about the material. So different etchants will reveal different characteristics. Here, the etchant is revealing what's called case hardness. So if you notice the blue coloration on the outside edge of the bolt threads, okay, you can see the case hardening. Now, case hardening is essentially they stick it into an oven and let it set at a certain temperature for a certain amount of time, and then they take it out, and there's different ways you can bring it back to room temperature. You can let it, cool in the ambient air. You could quench it in a medium like water or oil. And depending upon, the temperature that you put it in at, how long you leave it in the oven, the cooling mechanism that you use, all of these different things combined will produce different properties in the material. What we're looking at here in this picture with case depth is we want to measure the depth of the hardness on the outside, because the whole point of case hardening is to increase the hardness of the exterior surface. This provides better wear properties on the material, which are important because you can imagine there's a lot of wear and friction on the surfaces of both threads. So case hardening is a desirable process to place upon the bolts if you're manufacturing them, because they'll be a higher quality product. But you don't want the case to be too deep, because if the case is too deep, then you start getting changes in mechanical properties of the bolt, which may be undesirable. So as a quality control check, you're going to run through this metallographic procedure and make measurements of the case hardening depth. You can see the case hardening depth it's thicker here on the tips than it is down here in the roots of the thread. And if you look really closely at the roots of the thread, you can see the beginnings of cracks beginning to form. The roots of threads in bolts is a typical place where you see cracking initiate in a bolt. This introduces another aspect that I got into while working as a materials engineer called failure analysis, which in a nutshell, failure analysis is essentially CSI type work, but without the cops, the blood, and the gore. Very fascinating field to work in, because it's a detective game. It's a puzzle. You're trying to piece together, okay, so we've got these broken parts, and can we use these parts to tell us what happened? And oftentimes the answer is yes, because materials, especially metals, will leave clues behind, microscopic clues that indicate this is how the material ruptured or fractured or cracked. This is how the failure happened. These are the stresses. These are the forces that the part was subjected to when it failed. And then we can backtrack that with the design of the part to figure out, okay, so in order for that to take place, this had to take place, and we can figure out what's the root cause of the failure. Again, very exciting work and also very lucrative work, because interesting parties knowing what the root causes are, of course, if you're a business and you're running a manufacturing process, you want to know where that root cause is so you can improve your manufacturing process, get stuff back up online. But lawyers and insurance companies are also interested in knowing what the root cause is, because they want to know, if you're an insurance agent, you want to know, hey, are we going to deny your claim or are we going to honor it? Do we have a ground for denying your claim? Well, the failure analysis says that the cause of the accident or whatever is your fault, then we're probably going to deny your claim. They're going to want to know that. And the lawyers, they want to know who to go after in court. They want to know who to sue. So failure analysis can be a very interesting and exciting field to get into. One of the things that we do is sometimes we test materials. And so here, what you see here in this picture over here on the right is what's called a tensile test. So you basically have these grips in this huge mainframe, and you're going to put the material that you're going to test here in the middle, and you're going to basically pull it apart. So this grip is going to move up, this grip on the bottom is going to move down, and it's going to pull apart, and we're going to collect data. So you have an extensometer clipped here onto the material, and so the rate at which it extends out is going to be related to the force that was applied with that extension, and we can get lots of information about the mechanical properties of the material. It's a typical test, and one that I've run on occasion. After a while, I switched careers, became what's called a reliability engineer. I worked for a Fortune 500 company that you might have heard of. I'll be talking more about some of my experiences with that in class, because this is where I really gained an appreciation for statistics. Because one of the first things that I was tasked with as a reliability engineer was making statistical models to predict failure in gas turbine components for electrical power production. So what you see here in this photograph, here towards the center of the screen, is a gas turbine. Notice the size of the equipment. based on the relative size of the man here who's helping to guide the casing over the compressor section of the turbine. It has to be hoisted up by a crane because this huge piece of metal is solid cast iron. This is basically a safety device put in place so that these compressor blades, if any of them ever break off, they don't go flying off somewhere and accidentally slicing into somebody. Okay, that would be very, very bad. So in order to keep everything contained within the unit, they basically wrap everything up in cast iron. But you can imagine, I mean, a piece of cast iron that big is going to be extremely heavy, hence the need for the crane. And it's very slow. So you have, the worker here who's guiding the placement of the cast iron as it comes down on the unit. They also work to guide it as it comes up off the unit. Okay. These are really huge. And what you're seeing here in the picture is actually a smaller unit. Typically, the units for power production at a power plant are going to be much larger than what you see here in the picture. And a typical size is about the same as, say, the trailer on an 18-wheel truck that you see on the highway all the time. That's typical size that we're talking about for these units. There's a lot of vested interest in making sure that these units, which are producing power for the grid, do not fail. Well, how do we know when that's going to happen? Do we have anything to guide us? The answer is yes. We have models made with statistics that are actually fairly accurate at determining the risk level of a failure for a given type of operation. So you're going to run the unit for so many hours, or you're going to turn it on and off so many times. How you operate the unit will determine what risk you have for the unit breaking down and failing. These models are very important because for every minute that the power company has a failed unit that they want to have running, they are losing tens of thousands of dollars. So it's extremely important. Every minute, they're losing tens of thousands of dollars. So it's very important to them to know what's the risk level of a failure. So the other thing that these models are good for using is for determining inspections of these units. Obviously, you want to inspect the unit to make sure that everything is in tip-top shape, that you're not about to have a catastrophic failure, because catastrophic failures are hugely expensive. You have to bring a crane out on site with the crew. You got to pay for the time. You got to pay for materials. You got to pay for replacing parts. All this stuff. I mean, it's extremely expensive. So you want to avoid the catastrophic failure. Well, how do you know how often to inspect so that you avoid that catastrophic failure? Well, you don't want to inspect too infrequently, because that's just going to open up the door for the failure you're trying to avoid. But on the other end of the spectrum, you don't want to inspect the unit so frequently that the unit isn't running enough to make money for the power utility. So you're going to find that sweet spot that's in the middle. How do you know where the sweet spot is? Well, that's what the statistical model will tell you. The people who write contracts for power utility are also interested in these types of models, because, my employer was basically in the business of manufacturing this equipment, but they just don't sell the equipment. They want to sell you a service contract along with the unit, so that if anything happens, you have a warranty that says, okay, we'll come in and we'll make it better. And they make a lot of money off of these contracts. Well, you want to be able to know what can you reasonably include in these contracts and still make money for the company. That's what these models can tell you as well. So, again, this is the compressor section of the turbine. This is a ring of transition pieces, which is basically the transition between the combustion section where they burn the natural gas and the aft section where you actually have what are called buckets. The buckets are connected to a rotor. So it's basically channeling this hot air from the combustion section and pushing it out into these buckets that then turn the rotor. The rotor is then connected to a generator The generator has, inside the generator, there are magnets connected to the rotor. They spin around, and on the inside edge are wrapped around coils of copper. So you've got magnets spinning around next to copper coils. It induces an electric current, which is then collected and placed onto the grid. That's how the electric power is produced. Very interesting. I learned so much, and I have much more stories to tell you, which I'll be happy to share later in the course. But eventually I came to the point where it's like, I need to do something different, and so I became an instructor. I decided to embrace a career in education, and now I'm teaching here at the College of Western Idaho. I've been teaching here for a couple years, and it's great. I love it. I wish I would have made this jump sooner. So that's who I am. Now at this point, I need to explain a couple things. First, sometimes students are like wondering, well, what should I call you? Well, if you want to be bland and yet proper, you can call me Mr. Curtis, and I'm okay with that. You call me Professor Curtis, I'm okay with that. Not very exciting, but yeah, if that's the route you want to go, then yeah, I'm cool with that. However, if you want to be more bold and daring, you can call me Doc. Now, I have students on both sides of this fence, and I do what I can for all of them because I want to provide all of them with an excellent opportunity to get the education that they are paying to get. So whichever way you want to go with this is just fine with me. Some like to do one way, some like to do it the other. Whichever way you want to go, it's fine with me, but there's your options. At this point in the lecture, if we're in the classroom, I would turn to you and say, okay, now let's, give me an opportunity to find out who you are. And you tell me your name and a little bit about your, background and why you're taking the class. Most of you, I suspect, are taking this class not because you want to, but because it's required for your major. And I'm okay with that. When I took my first stats class in college, I took it because it was required for my major. So I totally get that. And I'm totally okay with that. That's the way you are. I hope that though by the end of the term you'll come to, change the belief about statistics a little bit. Because statistics is really a very interesting subject. It's not usually billed that way though. A lot of people think of statistics as a dry and dull subject. And there are reasons for this, okay? First, it's typically taught that way. Most of the people who are teaching statistics today, by and large, they're the type of really nerdy, geeky people who, don't have a lot of social skills, and they are not very interesting people in their own right. So they are really good when it comes to doing the statistics, but when it comes to teaching it to somebody else, that's a whole different ball of wax. And, a lot of them are just not really that adept at it. It's the only college class that I ever fell asleep in. And seriously, when I took statistics for the first time in college, I took 2 statistics classes, one during my undergraduate years and then one during my graduate program. The one I took for my undergraduate, oh my gosh, what a horrible experience I had. Okay, first of all, the class was at 1:30 in the afternoon, so it's that prime time for napping right after lunch. To make matters worse, it was in this huge auditorium where the lights weren't, all that great, and it was kept very, very warm. So it was just perfect conditions for napping. And then, if that wasn't enough, the teacher for the class, oh my gosh, a computer has more voice intonation than this guy. If you could imagine, it's like, welcome to statistics. Today, we will cover this material on probability. It was really like that. So it was like the perfect storm of elements that combined. And there were some days I was just like, because it was just too much. I just couldn't take it, and admittedly, even the most exciting of subjects, you're going to fall asleep with if it's taught in that manner. I'm really hoping to give you a very different experience with statistics, because let me tell you, this guy, the midterm exam for this course was awful. Okay. He gave us the midterm. We had 50 minutes in class to complete it. And most of the class, let me tell you something, almost everybody failed that test. So he had to grade on a curve in order to save his own skin. And afterwards, so he gives us our test back. And then he says, okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to work every problem on this test. So this was, one of those old style auditoriums that had the chalkboards in it. So he started on one side of the room and started working the first problem on the chalkboard there. And he worked his way on the chalkboards all the way around the room until he gets clear to the other side of the room, and he's worked the entire test in 20 minutes. And then he did something I'll never forget. He turns to us and he says, so there I've worked the test in 20 minutes. What's your problem? And I wanted to just pound this guy and put him 6 feet under, because I'm like, you're the one with the PhD in statistics. Why don't you do one of those statistical studies and tell us what happened? I was infuriated with this guy. I was like, you know what? I mean, it's like, you're supposed to be teaching us this stuff. And if most of a class is failing the test, doesn't that at least suggest that something may be wrong in the way you're delivering the material? Yeah, I think you might want to take a look at what you're doing. Okay, certainly we have a responsibility in the learning process, but you have one too. Okay, I'm hoping that in the course of this class that we can come together, we can each do our part, and we can have a wonderful experience with statistics so that you don't have the experience that I had. Now, again, I did not intend to take statistics ever again after that class, but it became expedient when I came to grad school, because if I didn't take the stats class, then I would have had to take another class which was taught at 7:30 in the morning, and there was only one section. And I saw that and said, isn't there something else I can do? Because I don't want to go to class at 7:30. So I found the stats class at 9:30. It was my only option to get out of the 7:30. So I said, I guess I'm going to have to bite it. And it turned out to be a much better experience because the teacher was very different. He actually approached it very differently, and it made statistics more understandable than it was before. Of course, the real learning curve I got was in the real world, but that's what you see with the graphic there down at the bottom of the screen. So what you're looking at is a model made on a statistical distribution. Okay, the model is predicting failure in a particular engineering component. If you don't know what you're looking at, you can look at it and say, well, it's a bunch of dots and a line through them. I mean, that doesn't seem very exciting. But let me tell you something. These models that can actually predict, when something is going to break or fail, and they're actually fairly accurate with it. I mean, it's not super science to the point where you can pin down to the very second when something's going to break down. It's nothing like that, but it gives you a good ballpark that's reasonably accurate. And in the process of making models like this for real world components, for things that were going on in the real world, I began to see that statistics wasn't this boring thing, this dry subject that I'd been given in school. No. Statistics is very powerful. Statistics is very exciting because it can tell you. I mean, think about that. You can make a reasonable prediction about the future based on past performance. That's amazing. Now, of course, the future is not written, and that's why what you're getting out of these models is not actually, when I say prediction, what I'm really talking about is a risk level. So, if you run your unit for this amount of time, then you're going to have this percentage risk that something's going to happen. There's still the chance that it might not. Okay, so really what it comes down to with these types of models is, do you like to play poker? What's your stock portfolio look like? Are you even in the market? I mean, how risk adverse are you? If you're very risk adverse, then a lower risk level is going to be what you want to maintain, which means you're going to run the unit less, you're going to be inspecting more frequently. But if you're willing to push that envelope a little bit more and roll the dice, so to speak, then, you run your unit longer and, you'll take what comes to you. So these models are very, very reasonably accurate, and help me to understand the statistics is actually something that's really powerful. And I hope to give you a sense of that as we go through the course. Now, let's talk about the syllabus. I'm not going to put everything about the syllabus in any lecture because, hey, we're adults and you're in college. So I assume you can read, which means I'm expecting you to go to the site on Blackboard and get the syllabus and read it and understand it. Okay? By turning in any assignment for this course, you're agreeing to be bound by the terms of the syllabus. So it's probably a good idea for you to check it out and see what it has to say. If you have any questions about anything that you see in the syllabus, or anything for that matter, just go ahead and bring it to me, and I'll do what I can to help. I do, however, want to hit some highlights. So let's dig into that. First of all, my availability. So I have 2 offices because I share with other instructors. So Mondays and Wednesdays from 4 to 5, you can find me in NCAB 107T. This is the cubicle that's right behind the front reception desk that you see when you walk in the door for the room. I'm also available in the Canyon County building on Tuesday and Thursdays from 11:30 to 12:30. I understand that some people take, an evening class like this one so that they can accommodate a full-time work schedule. And so I plan to office hours, during potential lunch break. So if you want, you can come check me out then. Of course, I also work in the Mass Solutions Center in NCAB 116 on Friday afternoons. So feel free to drop in. You don't need an appointment for any of these times. These are times when I'm going to be in a set place at a set time, and you can just drop by unannounced. And, if I'm not with anyone else, then, you're free to express your concerns and let me know what it is that I can do to help you. Of course, if those times don't work for you, feel free to make an appointment with me. Let's try to find something that works with your schedule. I have some flexibility in that department, and I'm willing to exercise it for my students. Email, however, is by far what my students have used in the past to get a hold of me. I generally respond within 1 business day. Okay, business day means that, if you mail me on a Wednesday, you're probably going to get something by Thursday. But if you email me on, say, a Saturday, well, Saturday's the weekend, so the next business day will be Monday. So you're going to have to wait a couple days before you actually hear from me. Now, sometimes I'm online on the weekends, but even during the work week, I'm not continuously on the network. So if you send me something, don't expect something instantaneously from me. It's not like I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs waiting for people to email me. That's not the life I have. The life I have is very different. So sometimes you're just going to have to wait a little bit. But generally within 1 business day, I'm pretty good at getting back with everyone who emails me. Grading policy. So standard grading policy, A's in the 90th percentile, B's 80th percentile, so on and so forth. Your final grade is going to come from homework, which has a weight of 20%, quizzes, which have a weight of 15%, 3 exams, which each have a weight of 15%, so together that's 45%, and then a final project, which is worth 20%. Now, there is no final exam for this course. Okay, this is one of the things I love about this, and students like this too. There is no final exam. Okay, instead, you're going to have a final project that you complete, and the final project will be the signature assignment for the class. Okay, we'll provide a lot of more detailed information about that final project after we get through, the first half of the course. So you'll get more about that later. For the moment, what you need to understand is that all of your assignments are in my stat lab or my math lab. So there you're going to be looking into that to track your grade. Okay. For a lot of other classes, I know instructors, and I've done this for other classes too, they put their grades for their students in Blackboard. And so, inside Blackboard, you go to My Grades, and it shows you what your running grade is so far in the class. You won't see that in Blackboard. You're going to see that only in the My Math Lab, My Stat Lab product. And this is where you're going to be spending most of your time anyway. Blackboard we will be using. I will use Blackboard for announcements for the class. If I need to send out a mass email to everybody, I'll just go to Blackboard and do that to let you know about any changes or anything that you might need to know as we go along in the course. I'll do that from Blackboard. I use Blackboard to house the syllabus, the course schedule. Any changes that I make in the course schedule, I'll adjust it and post the updated schedule up on Blackboard. I will also email you and let you know in class when I make changes to the schedule, so it's not going to be something that's, snuck behind you without being noticed. I'm trying to be as transparent as I can be. So I use Blackboard for housing that information, and then I also use Blackboard for housing lecture slides and videos. So after every lecture, I'm going to be posting lecture slides up on Blackboard. After everything we do in class, I'll take the presentation slides and put them on Blackboard. I'm going to be making videos like the one you're watching now. Those will be posted on Blackboard. So there are some things we'll use Blackboard for. It's just the bulk of the course where you're actually doing work that's graded. All of that stuff is going to come from your Pearson product. The textbook that's recommended for the class. Okay, I say it's recommended because there are students who can get through the course without using the textbook, and some students find the textbook not very helpful. Elementary Statistics by Mario Triola. I've looked at it. I think the textbook is fine, and some students are helped by it. I do recommend that you get the textbook, however, because the textbook contains an insert with all sorts of statistical formula and equations and stuff that I'm actually going to let you take the insert when you come to take the tests. You can have the insert with you. You can't take any of your own notes, but you can take this insert. So even if you use the textbook for nothing but that, it's worth purchasing. So I recommend getting the textbook. You absolutely have to get registered in my math lab or my stat lab. So, because this is where we're going to do the homework and the quizzes, and all the assignments you're graded on, with the exception of the final project, are there in the Pearson product. So, if you have a Pearson account already, you don't need to create a new one. Just use the one you already have. But if you don't have an account, you just, go to the login page, and there's an option there for you to create one right there online. Now, you are going to need the course ID and access code to get into the course and add it to your account. And that information is in the syllabus. So go to Blackboard, get the syllabus, read through it, get that course ID and access code information so that you can get registered with the class. And to do that, you just go to mymathlab.com or mystatlab.com. They'll both take you to the same login place. And I don't know why Pearson has, two different products for the same thing. It boggles my mind. Obviously, I'm not the one in charge, but if I were the one in charge, I'd have one product. This is what this does. This does it all. But apparently, that's not what Pearson decided to do. So both sites will take you to the same spot. In addition, I recommend a calculator. Now, this is not a requirement. This is a recommendation. Okay, we are going to be using some statistical software that you can access through the Pearson product. You can also access it directly online because it's a web-based application. It's called StatCrunch. And it does, a good job for what we need to do in this class. I admittedly had never heard of StatCrunch before I started teaching this course, so I didn't know anything about it. So I had a learning curve to ride with learning how to use the software. And part of what we're going to be doing in class is learning how to use the software, but keep in mind that this is something you're going to have to do to actually work through your problems and assignments. And for the most part, you're going to be using this. However, I do recommend a simple scientific calculator that has statistical functions with it, and you can get them fairly cheap. Okay, about $10 at Walmart or Target or wherever it is you want to go shopping. You can find, a decent calculator that will, perform basic statistical functions. And learning how to use that can come in useful, especially if statistics may be something that you use on occasion in your future career. So learning how to use that can be a good thing. And so I definitely recommend that. Okay, so our schedule for the course. So you can see here a brief rundown. I have a more detailed schedule located up on the syllabus, up on Blackboard with the syllabus. This schedule that I have loaded in Blackboard has not only the topics that we're going to cover in class that you see here on the screen, but it also has due dates for your assignments. If you look at your textbook, you'll notice that there are plenty more chapters in the book than there are actual chapters listed here on the schedule. We're only going to go through the first 10 chapters. And even then, we're not going to cover everything in every chapter. Most chapters we will, but there's a couple chapters where there's some sections that we're leaving out. It's because that material is thought to be not really needed for most of the students that come through CWI. So we basically skipped over some of the content. But this is a basic rundown, so you can see here. Now you'll notice that for Monday in week 1 and Monday in week 6, there's nothing listed. That's because those two are holidays. So week 1 for Monday, that was Martin Luther King Day, and then week 6, the Monday there is President's Day. That's February 20th, and we won't be having class because that's a school holiday. So there's nothing listed there. Now, you will have homework and quizzes to perform. Homework is typically due by 11:59 p.m. on the Thursday following the corresponding material, and then quizzes due on the following Friday, same time, 11:59. So, for example, next week, week 2, we're going to cover the material in Chapter 1. So the homework for Chapter 1 is going to be due on Thursday of week 2 by 11:59, and the quiz will be due for Chapter 1 on Friday of week 2. Okay, because it's the Friday after we cover that. I say typically because there is an exception. If you go down to week 10, you'll notice that we're taking our second test there on a Wednesday, but the Monday before, we actually have lecture material that we're covering, sections 7.3 and 7.4. So, if we ran through the normal schedule, then it would be that the homework for 7.3 and 7.4 would be due on Thursday after the test, and the quiz for Chapter 7 would be due after the test. And what we really want is to be done with homework and quizzes before we take the test, because these activities help to prepare us for the test. So for week 10, there's going to be an exception made on that Tuesday of week 10. The homework for 7.3 and 7.4 and the quiz for Chapter 7 will come due on that Tuesday of week 10, so that you can get that out of the way before you take the test. Other than that, it's typically going to run, homework due on Thursday, quiz due on Friday. Okay, I will have due date reminders in all of my lectures to help you remember. There's also the schedule there on Blackboard. You can download it, print it out, put it wherever you want as an electronic copy. So there's no excuse for not knowing when things are due. I'm giving you plenty of reminders. Now, when it comes to the homework, you actually can, make unlimited attempts on that. What that means is if you do the homework and you get a grade you don't like, you can just do the assignment over again until you keep getting a grade that you can live with. The quizzes, however, you only have 2 attempts on those, so you want to be very careful about the quizzes. And my recommendation is when you approach the quiz, treat the quiz like a practice test. Okay, so make sure you're in an environment where it would be similar to what you would find in class when you're coming into class to take the test. And just, use it as a practice test. If you on your first attempt, if you find that you didn't do as well as you wanted to do, then, go back and review the quiz. And then see, okay, so what is it that I messed up on? And then go back over the lecture materials. Go back over what we do in class. And try to figure out, okay, so, where did I go wrong? If you need help in that process, feel free to send me an email or, come find me during my office hours. I'm completely available for my students, or at least I try to be. And, I'll do what I can to help answer your questions. But once you take that second attempt, then that's it. Now, I will take the higher grade from whichever attempt that you make. That's for both homework and quizzes. So you'll get the highest grade that you earn. So that's the basic rundown with the homework and the quizzes. Now, late homework is accepted, but I will penalize you 10%. Okay, so the 10% penalty applies to those homework problems that you complete after the due date. Quizzes, on the other hand, you can't submit anything after the due date. In fact, I think the assignment is scheduled to close out once you hit the due date, so you can't even access it to take it. So make sure that you get those quizzes on time. I would recommend not even messing with the late homework penalty. Just avoid it altogether. Just get everything in. The homework is designed to prepare you for the quiz. The quiz is to prepare you for the test. And what we do in class should prepare you for all of that. So make sure that you get everything in on time. That's the best way to keep on track with the schedule, because you don't want to have to be learning too much at once, because it just makes it harder to learn everything. What I expect when you're in the classroom, first of all, there's no smoking. That's not just my policy, that's CWI's policy. Although if it weren't CWI's policy, it would still be my policy, because my throat is very much irritated by cigarette smoke. So I have very little tolerance for it, and it's simply not allowed during lecture. I will allow you to eat. I understand that, we're all in time crunches, and so some students, they need to eat while they're in class because it's their only chance for actually getting dinner. So I will allow you to eat. All I ask is that you don't make a mess and don't disturb other students. Okay? So if you're willing to abide by that, then, go ahead. Some eating is okay. Beverages, the same thing. Okay? If you bring them, make sure they're in a closed cup container. This reduces the risk, the probability that some mess is going to be made inadvertently. And so we don't want to have to deal with cleaning up the mess. And so if you bring a beverage, make sure it's in a closed-top container. You'll notice that when I come to class, I have a water bottle that I bring, and it has a closed top to it. So I'm living by the same expectations that I expect from you. Cell phones. Yes, some professors get really irked with this cell phone business in class. And, my attitude is basically, look, we're all adults here, okay? And you're paying for an opportunity to learn a certain, content or material, and I'm getting paid to help you learn that. But if you want to blow that opportunity away, that's fine. That's your business. You can do that. If you want to just sit there and text the whole time on your phone, I'll let you do that. I won't agree with your decision, but I will respect it. Now, I will draw the line when you start using your cell phone or any other electronic device for that matter. If you're using it in a way that disrupts the class, then I'm going to step in and say, okay, you know what? Now you're interfering with other people's opportunity to learn. If you want to blow your opportunity, that's fine. But, don't be interfering with other people's opportunity to learn because they paid for their opportunity. And if they want to get a good return on their investment, then that's just as much business for them as it is for you to squander the opportunity that you're paying for. So, and I've had very good results with this policy. Students are generally very respectful. Sometimes, they get calls and they want to take the call when they're in class. So then what do they do? They step outside of class so they don't disturb anybody. And then they come back in when they're done. It's nothing that, I'm going to usually crack down on, unless, of course, like I say, you get to the point where you cross the line, and that line is where you start interrupting other people, and then that becomes the point where I intervene. But, hey, you know what? If you're not bothering anybody, that's fine. I do expect you to participate fully in all class activities. I don't think you're going to want to actually sit there and text on your phone the whole time. I'm designing class time so that you can actually do stuff during class. I want to actually do statistics and not just hear about it. That means I'm going to be planning activities to help engage you with the material. Now, some of these activities are going to be better than others. Okay, that's because that's just the nature of what we're going through. So if we're learning a lot of vocabulary, for example, then that's probably not going to be as exciting as if we're learning about probability. Because there are a lot more different types of activities we can do to learn about probability than when it comes to learning strict vocabulary. That being said, I do want to focus class time on actually being actively involved with the material, because I think this helps us to learn it better, and it helps us to realize its power and realize that it can be exciting and fun. I mean, it doesn't have to be this dry, boring thing. Okay? Now, all the things that we do in class are not graded, but they are designed to help you when you do the homework assignments and go to take the quizzes, and that in turn will help you to do better on the tests. So even though what we do in class is not graded, if you put yourself fully into it, it can help you to do better on the assignments that are graded. Now, one final note before we move on. There is no makeup policy for this class. Okay, so if you miss class or you miss a due date, don't come crying to me with an email or an in-person, visit where you're all in tears saying, this is the reason why you missed class and that you missed your assignment and you need a exception to make something up. Okay? I'm busy enough as it is trying to put all this stuff together for people who are working on schedule. And you know what the schedule is because I've given it to you from the first day of class. So you have access to this stuff. You know ahead what's coming down the line. You know this stuff. So, don't come to me with this, story. Now, there are exceptions. Okay, I do make exceptions on occasion for extenuating circumstances. But again, those are rare occasions. So, for example, as one student, it's like, okay, so my grandmother died and she lived in Hawaii. So I need to go to Hawaii for the funeral. Well, okay. My response will typically be, I'm sorry for your loss. Sorry to hear your grandmother died. That's not a very pleasant thing usually. But, before I, make an allowance for you to, miss something like a test or make something up. First of all, you don't have an excuse for you really don't have an excuse for trying to make up homework or quizzes because all of that stuff is in the Pearson product, which you can get anywhere you have an internet connection. And these days, internet connections are pretty much everywhere. So you don't have to be in school, in class, or, to actually do the assignment. You can do it anywhere you have an internet connection. So there's really no excuse for missing those due dates. The tests, however, are in class. And so, there may be an occasion, like, for example, your grandmother who lived in Hawaii died. So you want to go to the funeral. Well, okay, hello, it's Hawaii. Who wouldn't want to go to Hawaii, huh? But, so before I make extenuating exception for this rule, I'm going to want to see some third-party verification. Okay, I'm sorry for your loss, but show me a copy of the obituary where it says, it's printed in a public newspaper that says, this is the person that, that's your grandmother, and, she died on such and such date, and she actually does live in Hawaii, and this is where the funeral is going to be held, and so on and so forth. A third-party verification, because I can't tell you how many students I've had abuse the policy of making exceptions. And so I just put a stamp on it and say, okay, this is what's going to happen. You want an exception, you're going to have to work for it. Because, in order for me to make an alternative arrangement for you, I have to put in extra work. So I just put a kibosh on all of that and just say, look, and students typically tend to get the idea and don't have to bother me with it. There's still a few who do, and there probably always will be, but I'd rather deal with the few than the many when it comes to something like this. So there is no makeup policy for the class. If you just do your best to get stuff in, and if you don't get it, then just move on. That's the way to do it. So as in on the previous slide, you may be wondering, okay, so wait a minute, if we're actually going to be doing all this activity stuff in class, then, what's the class structure going to be like? And I'm doing what's called a flipped format. My motivation for doing this comes from comments from some of my previous students. They really wanted to see videos on lectures that they could watch outside of class. So if they didn't get something in class, they could go back to the video and they could watch it as many times as they want. And they could go back to the particular part that they wanted. So yeah, I am going to make videos for lectures. And I'm going to expect you to watch those outside of class before we actually go into class. And then, if you want to watch it additionally to review content or for whatever purpose, go for it. When you come to class, what we'll do then is we'll start with a brief lecture to hit the highlights of the video that you should have already watched before coming to class. And then we're going to engage a series of activities, okay, to help you learn what's in the lecture, okay. Some of these activities will be performed individually. Other activities will involve group. And sometimes, we'll get into small groups. Sometimes the whole class will be one big group. It just depends on the activity. So I want to actually, again, do statistics and not just, have you sit there and listen to it. Because if that's all that's going to happen, most of you are not going to get it. You will, however, have a higher chance of actually learning the material if you're engaging it, if you're interacting with it, if you're actively involved with it. Okay? So by actually going to a less traditional format, which is the flipped classroom, I'm actually freeing up time in class for you to actually do the statistics. Now, none of these activities, as I've said before, none of these activities will be graded, okay? But they will help you perform better on the activities that are graded. So I highly encourage you, do not miss class. Even though all my lectures are on video and you don't have to come to class for it, please come to class because we're going to be doing stuff that helps you understand the material better. It's a great way for you to ask questions and get answers. And sometimes other students may have questions that you have but don't really realize you have until you start looking and going into the assignment. So it's to your benefit to come to class and get answers to those questions and get the extra help with the learning experience. And I'm trying to structure the class so that you can have the best learning experience possible. Of course, there'll always be problems and things that can be improved, and I'm a big fan of personal improvement. So if you see anything that doesn't work or you're having a problem with something, feel free to let me know, and I'll do what I can to address it, resolve it, improve it. Now, you're likely to do better in the course if you adopt some sort of rhythm with the class. So I have here on the screen merely a suggestion for how you can approach the class. If a different rhythm works better for you, then go with a different rhythm, okay? I'm not trying to ram anything down anyone's throat saying you have to do it this way. I wouldn't like being told that, and so I'm not going to tell that to other people. Here on the screen, you see what I would suggest would be something that seems reasonable. So you're coming to class on Monday and Wednesday, and so the day before lecture, the day before class, you're going to watch the video to help prepare you for class. So Tuesday, you're going to watch the video to prepare for Wednesday. And sometime over the weekend, you'll watch a video to prepare for Monday. Then you're going to come to class. We'll do our activities to help you to learn the material more. And then Thursday, you're actually doing the homework. And then Fridays, you're going to take the quiz. And then on the weekend, you'll watch the video for the class that's going to be the following Monday. As you just go through this rhythm. Now again, this is only a suggestion. If something different works better for you, that's fine. Go for it. Let's say you don't want to do all your homework on one day. You want to spread it out. So you want to do the homework for what we do in class on Monday. You want to do that on Tuesday. Okay, fine. Do that on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, you can do for what we do on Wednesday. That's perfectly fine. Because this is an evening class, you don't necessarily have to watch the video. If you have a chance to watch the video earlier the same day, you could do that. That's perfectly legitimate. Whatever rhythm you adopt, though, I highly encourage you, find some way to interact with the course content every day. Okay? So Monday you're doing something, Tuesday you're doing something, Wednesday you're doing something, Thursday you're doing something, Friday you're doing something. And then, there's something over the weekend that you do. Okay, make sure you do something every day. The more frequently you interact with it, the more it's going to promote learning. Because whenever you learn anything new, your brain is hardwired to take that new information and put it into a sort of temporary memory slot. The more you interact with that material in the temporary memory slot, then that's telling your brain, hey, we need to build more permanent roadways, mental pathways to get to that information. So then your brain responds by building the more permanent memory, and then you remember it better, okay? Because you've interacted with it more. But if your expectation is, hey, I'm just going to come to class on Monday and Wednesday, and that's all I'm going to do, and I'll just do the bare minimum outside of class, then you're probably not going to succeed very well. Okay? It's more likely that you'll do better if you interact with the material every single day. So whatever frequency, or rhythm that you adopt for the class, make sure that the frequency of interaction with the course material is at least once a day. You're doing something every day. Okay, so at this point, if we were in a traditional face-to-face lecture situation, I would be giving you a syllabus quiz. Okay, now again, this isn't something that's graded. It's just to test your knowledge on what you've already done. Because you're watching a video, it can be very tempting to just go back to that point in the lecture and say, okay, let's see what the answer to that question was. What did he say about this? I highly encourage you not to do that. Okay? Just take out a sheet of paper and just say, okay, boom. Or since there's only 6 questions, you don't have to write anything down. If you can keep it in your head, that's fine. But, just give the answer of what you think it is. And then if you get it wrong, then that's pointing to you that you need to go back and look at that. And then that's a good time to go back with the video and find out, okay, what did he actually say? Let me review that over again. Okay. Again, not part of your grade, but let's just take a few minutes to run through these questions. Okay. So the first question is, if you email your instructor on Friday, February 17th, when is the latest date that you can expect a reply? Go ahead and get your answer to that. Okay, and the next question, number 2, for what percentage of your final grade does the final exam count? How much is the final exam worth? That's the second question. And then the next question is, where can you find the course ID and access code for the class? Where is that information located? And fourth, when the material from a given chapter is presented in lecture, when will the homework for that material be due? And then fifth, what is the makeup policy? What's the makeup policy for the course? And then last but certainly not least, true or false, cell phone use is permitted in class. Is that true or is that false? Okay, so now that we've run down each of these questions, let's go ahead and review the correct answers to these questions. Let's see if you got the right answers. And again, if you didn't get the right answer, that's okay. This is not graded, but there's obviously a gap in your knowledge, and you need to go back and fill in that gap. Okay, relearn what you need to learn. So, first question: if you email your instructor on Friday, February 17th, when is the latest date that you can expect to reply? The answer will be Tuesday, February 21st. This is the next business day. Okay, remember, I respond to email within 1 business day. So if you email me on Friday, then you can expect normally a response by the following Monday. But because February 20th is President's Day, that's a school holiday, school will be closed, therefore the next business day is Tuesday, February 21st. Next question. For what percentage of your final grade does the final exam count? Well, there is no final exam for this class. There is a final project, and it counts 20% of your final grade. Where do you get the course ID and the access code? Well, you should know that should come from the syllabus, and I have the syllabus posted on Blackboard. So once you get registered for the class, you can get into Blackboard and get the syllabus to get the course ID and the access code that you need to get signed up inside MyMathLab/MyStatLab. When material from a given chapter is presented in a lecture, when will the homework for that material be due? Well, typically the homework is going to be due by 11:59 on Thursday of the same week. Okay, on that line, quizzes are going to be due on Friday of the same week that we finish the actual chapter. Okay, again, there's a detailed schedule with due dates up on Blackboard, so be sure to check that out. What is the makeup policy for the course? Well, there is no makeup policy. Okay, remember, if you miss something, if you miss class, or you miss an assignment, you miss a due date, don't come whining to me about, whatever circumstance you had. Okay, because, we've all got hard times, and you know what the schedule is ahead of time. The expectation is you're going to arrange your affairs so that you don't miss that. And that's basically the policy for the class. Now, there are exceptions that I make on rare occasions, but we already discussed that that's very rare. True or false, cell phone use is permitted in class. Well, that's true, but there's a caveat. Only if the use does not disturb others. If what you're doing is disturbing other people, then no, I'm going to ask you to step outside and check yourself out of the classroom. So, real syllabus quiz, if you missed any of those questions, it's okay. It's not going to affect your grade, but you will want to go back and find the spots in the lecture where you need to fill in a knowledge gap. To help with that process, I'm also posting the lecture slides themselves, so you don't have to look through a video. I know a lot of times I'm looking for a specific part of information, and I don't want to watch a video because I want to be able to scan quickly through the material to identify the exact piece of information that I'm looking for. So if you're like that, then you're going to enjoy the fact that I put lecture slides up in addition to the videos, so you can just quickly flip through those slides on your own through PowerPoint and figure out where's the information I need and then get it and go. So we've come to the end of this lecture. Some upcoming assignments you need to know about. So on Monday, you want to make sure that you have added your course to your Pearson account, and remember the course ID and the access code are in the syllabus. Many of you have already done that, and I thank you for that. Be sure to watch the video for Monday's lecture before you come to class on Monday. So that's sections 1.1 and 1.2. Also, there's a video that will come up. It'll become available on Blackboard after class on Monday for what we do on Wednesday, section 1.3 and 1.4. So make sure you watch that before Wednesday. Homework for the sections in Chapter 1 are going to be due on Thursday, and then the quiz for Chapter 1 due on Friday. And then sometime over the weekend, make sure you watch the next video for the first part of Chapter 2, which we'll get in on the following Monday. So that's all we have for this lecture. If you have any questions, be sure to email me or come find me. I'll do what I can to help. Otherwise, I'll see you in class. Thanks for watching.